I never expected my mom's best friend to be the one to change everything. It started like any other uncomfortable visit: awkward hugs, stiff smiles, and the quiet hum of family tension. My mom was bustling in the kitchen, trying to pretend things were fine between us. They weren't. We barely talked these days. Then there was her, Clara. She stood by the window with her usual grace, sipping tea like she belonged in a different world. She'd always been around, ever since I was a kid. Beautiful, composed, kind, and just a little too quiet. I used to think she was shy. Now, I'm not so sure. After dinner, I was about to leave when she pulled me aside. Her hand was trembling slightly as she slipped an envelope into mine. "Don't open it here," she whispered. "Just when you're alone." Her eyes locked with mine for a moment longer than they should have. It wasn't affection. It was weight, like she had placed something heavy in my chest without asking. I didn't open the letter right away. I left it on the seat beside me while I drove, pretending it didn't burn through my thoughts. But that night, with the house silent and the lamp flickering beside my bed, I finally tore it open. There were only two things inside: a handwritten note with an address and a time. No explanation. No signature. Just meet me. 7 p.m. 2:05, Cherry Lane. I stared at it like it was a trick. Why would she send this? Why to me? I considered throwing it away. This had to be some misunderstanding. Maybe she meant it for someone else. Maybe she'd made a mistake. But I knew she hadn't. Deep down, I knew that letter was meant for me. And the fact that it didn't say why made it worse. The next day, I tried to go about my life. Work was a blur. My mind kept circling back to that note, the clean handwriting, the simplicity of it. And the way she looked at me when she handed it over, like she was scared and hopeful at the same time. By the afternoon, I told myself I wouldn't go. I didn't owe her anything. Whatever this was, it was none of my business. But as the clock ticked closer to 7, I found myself driving. The address was on the edge of town, tucked behind a line of tall trees. A small house, more like a cottage. I sat in the car for a full 10 minutes, staring at the front door. It was stupid. Dangerous, even. But I wasn't turning back. When I knocked, the door opened almost instantly. She was already there, waiting. No words, no smile, just a subtle nod to come inside. I stepped over the threshold like I was crossing into another world. We stood in silence for a while. The kind of silence that fills the air before something irreversible happens. Then she spoke, voice low, almost breaking. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to listen without judging me." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. She looked tired, older than I remembered, like this secret had been eating her alive. "Your father and we were together. For a long time. Before he met your mom. And even after." The words didn't hit me all at once. They sank slowly, like poison through the bloodstream. "I loved him," she said. "I never stopped. But he chose her. And I stayed close. Close enough to hurt myself. And close enough to," she paused, "to watch you grow up." I was frozen. I wanted to ask her why she was telling me. Why now? But I couldn't form the words. "He died with so many lies," she continued. "I don't want to carry them anymore. And you're old enough to hear the truth." I swallowed hard. Why me? Why now? She looked at me with eyes full of something that wasn't quite sadness. "Because I owe you. And because there's something else." She didn't say it right away. Instead, she walked over to the table and placed another letter down. "This one's not from me. He wrote it for you. Before he passed." I didn't take it. I couldn't. I just stared at her. "You don't have to read it now," she said. "But everything changes when you do." There was a silence that followed. Not the kind that waits for words, but the kind that is the answer. I left without saying goodbye. When I got home, I sat in the dark with that second letter in my hands. I didn't open it. Not yet. I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth, whatever it was. But I knew one thing. That night, everything shifted. And nothing would ever be the same again. The address led me back to the cottage on Cherry Lane. I didn't knock this time. The door was unlocked. She was inside, waiting, seated on the couch, eyes fixed on the floor. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she looked up, and the weight of everything she'd said before came rushing back. Her expression had shifted. There was no more fear in it, just exhaustion. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said quietly. I told her I almost didn't. But I needed answers. I needed clarity. I needed something to explain why this secret had been placed in my lap like a live wire. "I didn't bring you here to justify myself," she said. "But I owe you more than half-truths." She stood and walked to a small drawer. She pulled out a photo, my father and her, years ago, younger, smiling. "We met before your mother ever knew him. We were together for almost 3 years. He left me when she got pregnant." The sharpness of it cut through me. "He loved me," she continued, still holding the photo like it was fragile. "And I forgave him for leaving." I understood. But he came back. Again and again. Every time your mother looked the other way, he came to me. I asked why she stayed. Why she let it happen. Why she let me grow up beside her without knowing any of this. Because love doesn't always make sense. And I told myself I was protecting you. Her voice was thin now. Honest. Too honest. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. "He wrote that letter for you 2 weeks before he died," she said. "He wanted you to know the kind of man he really was." I asked her if she ever stopped loving him. She didn't hesitate. "No." But he broke me in more ways than I'll ever admit out loud. I wanted him to choose me. He never did. Not fully. She looked at me again. Longer this time. "I don't want you to hate him," she said. "But I want you to know him. All of him. You deserve that much." I told her I wasn't sure what I deserved anymore. I felt torn between grief, betrayal, and something else I didn't want to name yet. She stepped closer. Her hand brushed mine. A small, unintended gesture, but everything in me tightened. I pulled back slightly, but not because I was afraid. Because I wasn't. And that scared me more than anything. There was tension in the air now. A shift. The way her eyes lingered on mine. The way her breathing changed. I felt something unspoken between us stretch thinner and thinner, ready to snap. She didn't look away. "You remind me of him," she whispered. "Not just how you look, but how you hold things in. How you watch the world." It wasn't a compliment. It was something heavier. A recognition. I stepped back, trying to gather my thoughts. She didn't follow, but I felt her watching every move. There was a silence again, this time different. Less about what had been said, more about what might happen next. I told her I needed time. I needed to think. She nodded slowly. "Of course. But I needed you to know everything before I left." I asked what she meant. She said she was moving. That staying in the same town as my mother was no longer something she could bear. "She won't forgive me. And I don't blame her. I just hope one day she forgives you if she ever finds out." Her saying that made me realize how real this had become. This wasn't a story. It wasn't some hidden drama. It was my life, unraveling at my feet. I left the cottage without taking the second letter. I told her I'd come back for it. Maybe. All the way home, I couldn't stop replaying her voice in my head. The sadness. The guilt. And something else, something dangerously close to longing. When I got home, I tried to distract myself. But nothing worked. I sat with the weight of it until the early hours of the morning. I hadn't read my father's letter. I hadn't made peace with any of it. But one thing was certain. I couldn't pretend this didn't matter. Not anymore. Whatever line had been drawn between right and wrong, truth and betrayal, had already started to blur. I told myself I wouldn't go back. That it was over. I'd heard what I needed to hear, and anything more would just make it worse. But the truth is, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the look in her eyes when she said I reminded her of him. About the way her voice cracked when she said she was leaving. It haunted me. Not in a way that scared me, but in a way that made me feel like I was already missing something I never really had. Days passed. I tried to bury it in work, in sleep, in silence. But every moment alone was just a loop of her words, her face, her presence. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to. But I knew the pull wasn't going away. The second letter came on a Tuesday. No envelope this time. Just folded and slid under my front door. One sentence. I'm leaving tomorrow. If you want to see me again, you know where. There was no decision to make. I was already out the door before I could talk myself out of it. I didn't knock when I arrived. I stepped inside, heart pounding louder than my footsteps. She was standing in the center of the room. No words, no explanations. Just stillness. Then, without a sound, she stepped toward me and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow and certain, like it had been waiting for years. Like something broken inside both of us had found its match. I should have stopped it. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. I didn't want to. Her hands moved to my face, mine to her waist, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. There was no talk of right or wrong. No guilt in that moment. Just heat, closeness, emotion. Every inch of hesitation between us collapsed. It was messy and raw and silent except for breathing and the sound of skin against skin. When it was over, neither of us spoke. We just lay there, tangled in something far more complicated than lust. I couldn't recognize myself. I had crossed a line I told myself I'd never even approach. And yet, I felt more seen, more alive, than I ever had. She traced a line down my arm with her fingers. You don't have to say anything, she whispered. This doesn't have to mean more than it is. But that was the problem. It did mean more. It meant everything and nothing at the same time. The next morning, I didn't leave right away. We sat across from each other, barely touching our coffee. The silence was heavier than before. There was no one doing what had happened. She asked me what I was thinking. I said I didn't know. She smiled, a sad, tired smile. You're trying to figure out if this was a mistake, she said. But deep down, you already know the answer.
I didn't respond.
She leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. I've lived most of my life trying to feel loved by a man who couldn't give me all of himself. And now here I am, repeating the same story. Only this time it's worse. Because it's you. The weight of her words hit me harder than the night before. I told her I didn't plan for this. That I didn't expect to feel anything. She nodded. Neither did I. But that doesn't change what's already happened. We agreed to keep it between us. There was no other option. My mother would never forgive either of us. And maybe we wouldn't forgive ourselves either. But I couldn't stop seeing her. It became a pattern. Days apart, then a message. A look. A meeting. Sometimes it was just talking. Sometimes not. But always in secret. Always behind a wall of guilt that neither of us could tear down. I started avoiding my mom. Canceled visits. Ignored calls. I couldn't look her in the eye without feeling like every word out of my mouth was a lie. Clara started acting different too. More possessive. More invested. She'd ask if I thought about her when we were apart. If I felt what she felt. I never gave her a straight answer because I didn't have one. My feelings weren't clear. They were a storm of want, confusion, shame, and something that might have been love. She told me she didn't regret it. That for once, she felt chosen. Even if it was wrong. Especially because it was wrong. I wasn't sure if I believed her. Or if I just wanted to. One night, she asked me if I thought we could ever be something real. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew the truth would destroy whatever illusion we'd built. There was no real in what we had. Just escape. Just a way to feel alive when everything else felt numb. But the deeper I went, the more it consumed me. I started losing sleep. Losing clarity. I couldn't separate myself from what we'd done. The worst part? I didn't want to. It all came undone faster than I imagined. Secrets like ours don't stay quiet forever. One mistake was all it took. A forgotten message on my phone. My mother saw it. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to know something was wrong. She didn't scream, didn't accuse. She just looked at me like I was someone she'd never met. I tried to explain, tried to lie, then tried to confess, but the damage was already done. She left the room and didn't speak to me for 3 days. Clara called that night, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. My thoughts were chaos, a mess of what ifs and why did it. I knew it would get worse.
And it did.
My mother finally confronted me. Her voice was flat, calm in the way that's scarier than yelling. How long? She asked. I told her the truth. Not all of it, but the part she needed. She didn't cry. She didn't slap me. She just looked tired. Older.
Broken.
She was my best friend, she said quietly. And you're my son. Do you have any idea what it feels like to lose both in one breath? I had no answer. She left me standing there and went upstairs. That silence cut deeper than any words could. And still, I didn't reach out to Clara.
Not that day.
Not the day after. But she came to me. She said she'd heard. That my mother had called her, screamed at her, told her never to speak to either of us again. Clara didn't deny anything. She just stood in front of me, asking the same question over and over. What do we do now? I didn't know. I told her that. For the first time, I didn't have an escape or a plan. All I had was regret.
But even that was twisted.
Because I still wanted her. And I hated that I did. She said she was leaving the next morning. Not just the town. Everything. Said she couldn't stay somewhere that had turned her into a villain. I asked her if she'd ever loved me, or if I was just another way to fill the space he left behind. She looked at me with more honesty than I deserved. I loved you in a way I shouldn't have. But it wasn't fake. It never was. Then she was gone. She didn't ask me to follow. She didn't beg me to stop her. And I didn't try. I stayed in that house, feeling the cracks spread through everything. My family, my sense of self, even time. My mother moved around like I didn't exist. She stopped setting a plate for me. Stopped asking if I was okay. Her grief wasn't loud. It was quiet, surgical, devastating. I read my father's letter finally. Alone in my room. His words were careful, apologetic in a way that tried to sound noble. He admitted everything. The affair. The feelings. The regrets. But there was no apology to me. Only explanations. Only stories about how love is never perfect and how choices are rarely black and white. He wrote like a man trying to ease his guilt without taking full responsibility. And yet I read it all. When I finished, I didn't feel closure. I felt numb. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about the aftermath. The cost of the truth. Weeks passed. Clara didn't return. No calls. No messages. Just a void. I heard from someone she'd moved out of state. Changed her number. Started over. That should have made it easier. It didn't. I tried to fix things with my mom.
Slowly. Gently.
I apologized in ways that didn't rely on words. I cleaned the kitchen. I brought her tea. I sat near her in silence, hoping presence could speak where language failed. She softened eventually. Not forgiveness. Not even acceptance. But something in between. She started looking at me again, not with love, but with recognition. As if she finally saw the brokenness inside me and understood it mirrored her own. I never tried to justify what I did. I didn't defend Clara. I didn't bring her up. We let her become a ghost neither of us mentioned. But the memory stayed. In the quiet. In the stillness. In the moments when I remembered her voice saying my name like it meant something. Some nights, I wonder if it all could have gone differently. If I'd ignored the first letter. If I'd walked away when I had the chance. If I'd stopped myself before it went too far. But that's the thing about choices. You never know they were mistakes until they've already marked you. I think about Clara sometimes. I think about the version of me she saw, the one that didn't exist before her and won't exist again. I don't know if it was love. Maybe it was. Maybe it was just need. But either way, it happened. And now I live with it. Every day.